The day of my engagement party was just moments away from the vow exchange when it happened. In a synchronized wave of digital light, every guest's phone screen illuminated with a video. The video showed my illegitimate half-brother in a very intimate situation with my fiancée. The ceremony came to an abrupt and silent halt. From my position on the stage, I saw my half-brother's smug grin in the crowd, and I let out a long, quiet sigh that was mistaken for shock. I mouthed 2 words to him across the room. Close one, a very close one. I had almost married the Morrison family's problem child. Engagement parties for the wealthy are always drawn out, complicated affairs. I had been moved around like a showpiece for hours. And now, finally, it was the moment we were meant to exchange our marriage certificates. And now, Mr. Vance, you may exchange vows with the love of your life, the officiant's cheerful voice announced to the assembled guests. Standing on the raised platform, I casually glanced at the time. It was right around when Daniel's people were scheduled to make their move. As if on cue, just as the flower girl was handing me the certificate, a wave of shocked gasps and confused murmurs spread through the crowd below. What is this? This can't be real, can it? I never realized the Morrison girl was so unrestrained. It looks like she wants to be with both of them. Well, isn't this fitting? Daniel was the one who was supposed to be with her from the start. Who knows what kind of dirty tricks Alexander pulled to get the engagement in the first place? Now the 2 of them can finally be together. Exactly. Look how pale she is. She must be furious about Alexander's scheming. Listening to the whispers rising from behind me, I watched as Mr. and Mrs. Morrison's polite, practiced smiles began to falter. Their personal assistant hurried over, handing them a phone to show them what everyone else was seeing. I glanced in their direction from a distance. It wasn't the first time I had seen the video, but the sordid images on the screen still felt like a physical blow. He wanted to see me lose my mind? Fine. I would give him a performance he wouldn't forget. My insanity would be a calculated act, but his suffering would be entirely, devastatingly real. I shot a quick look at Daniel, who was grinning with triumph in the crowd. After mouthing one last thing to him, I unleashed a controlled fury. I stormed off the stage and snatched the phone directly from Mrs. Morrison's hand. She was so caught off guard that she couldn't stop me. I fixed my gaze on the phone's screen for a long moment before slowly looking up at Chloe, making sure my eyes were wide with manufactured shock. And my fingers trembled convincingly, as if I were unable to form a single word. Putting on a show of struggling to contain my rage, I crumpled the marriage certificate in my fist and strode toward the front row corner where my dear brother, Daniel, was seated. I delivered 2 sharp slaps across his face, the sound echoing slightly in the stunned silence. Then I grabbed his jaw, forcing it open, and stuffed the crumpled ball of paper into his mouth. "Since you're so willing to debase yourself for my fiancé," I said, my voice low but carrying, "how could I, as your older brother, not help you achieve your goals?" Before Daniel could even spit out the paper, my expression turned cold and detached. I let out a humorless laugh. I had no idea Miss Morrison had such hobbies. I can't say I approve of them. I'll be taking my leave now. With that, I ripped the lavalier microphone from my suit jacket, tore off the boutonniere, and walked out of the venue without looking back. Everyone seemed to be frozen by my performance. They didn't seem to snap out of their shock until I was already out the door. By the time they rushed outside to try and speak with me, all they received was a face full of exhaust as my friend Leo deliberately spun the tires before speeding away. As the bright red supercar raced down the road on the outskirts of the city, I was already busy on my phone. I sent the video to every gossip blog and clickbait news account I could find. By the time we pulled into the driveway of Leo's villa, the story was already beginning to explode across social media. I kept refreshing the page, watching the view count on the topic skyrocket. I could feel my expression twisting into an excited, distorted grin. Beside me, Leo swallowed hard. "Alex, man, you need to calm down," he said, a worried look on his face. "You're kind of scaring me right now." I took a deep breath and forced a smile for him. "Sorry, I'm just a little too excited." After reassuring Leo, my eyes returned to my phone screen. "Go ahead and marry Daniel," I muttered to myself. "I can't wait." Then I turned off my phone, went into one of Leo's guest rooms, and fell into a deep sleep. After sleeping for what felt like a full day and a night, I finally turned my phone back on. A flood of missed call notifications immediately populated the screen, a clear testament to someone's powerless rage. The phone had barely been on for a minute before it started ringing again. With Leo watching curiously from across the room, I answered. My mother's furious voice exploded from the speaker. "Alexander Vance, you have a lot of nerve. Walking out of such an important event like that? Get your ass back here right now. Who do you think you are, ditching the Morrison wedding?" I looked up at a picture frame I had recently placed on a nearby desk and laughed softly. "You have to be kidding me. Your precious younger son was the one who sent a video of himself with his future sister-in-law to every single guest." I just saw the video and was so overcome with grief that I collapsed. From what I can see, the story is spreading pretty widely. Shouldn't you be helping your favorite son instead of wasting your time calling the bastard you left to rot? I heard the sound of something heavy crashing to the floor on her end of the line, but I ignored her tantrum. "As far as I know, Mr. Morrison is the one in charge of their family, right? I heard he smashed a wine glass right at Daniel's feet. It seems he wasn't too pleased with his new prospective son-in-law, was he?" The line went silent, and I hung up. According to the informant I had left at the party, Mr. and Mrs. Morrison's faces were as dark as thunder when they left, and they didn't spare Chloe a single glance. Chloe, who had lived a charmed life until that moment, had no idea how to handle the situation and just stood frozen on the stage. It was the officiant I had hired who had to scramble to smooth things over and bring the ceremony to a close. A perfectly good high society engagement party had ended as a complete farce. While the guests didn't say anything directly to the Morrisons' faces, their hushed whispers as they departed made their opinions perfectly clear. And when the whole fiasco was finally over, Chloe actually left with her arm linked through Daniel's, getting into the same car. Seeing my expression begin to twist again, Leo popped a grape into my mouth. "What if the Morrisons find out you were the one who leaked the video?" I swallowed the grape. "They won't. I wasn't the one who sent it. I just gave my dear brother a little nudge." Leo paused for a second. Then he understood. He handed the entire fruit platter to me. "That's my Alex. So smart. Here's your reward." I didn't say anything else, just looked down at my phone, watching the trending topics about the scandal already starting to disappear. It seemed the Morrisons still cared enough about their daughter to clean up her mess, even after a disaster like this. But a scandal of this magnitude is like tire tracks in the snow. Unless another blizzard comes, you can't cover them up completely. What's done is done. It always leaves a mark. In my hazy memory, my father was once a world-famous jewelry designer. The Vance family had been in the business for generations. Although they had faced many setbacks, and by my father's generation only he and a few elderly uncles were left, Vance-designed jewelry was still renowned. For many high society events, wearing a Vance piece was your ticket in. Those were the glory days for the Vance family. It was also when my mother, Evelyn, successfully married into it. At the time, she beat her chest and swore she would treat my father's family as her own. But as soon as my father and his uncles passed away, and the family business fell into her hands, it immediately went into decline. How could a vain, superficial woman obsessed with fame and fortune ever have the skill to run a family business built on generations of design artistry? When my mother first married my father, they were deeply in love. The family elders were all lifelong craftsmen with simple minds. In her 3rd year of marriage, Evelyn took a lover and had my brother, Daniel. On my 15th birthday, I didn't get to see my father one last time. When I received the call and rushed to the hospital, Daniel threw a tantrum and physically held me up at the entrance, drawing a crowd that blocked my way. I kept trying to explain the urgency, but because of Daniel's crying and screaming, the onlookers wouldn't let me pass. I even knelt on the ground and begged them, pleading to let me go see my father, but they wouldn't budge. By the time the police arrived and finally cleared a path for me, I sprinted to the hospital room only to find that my father had closed his eyes for the last time just a minute earlier. Evelyn stood off to the side. When I confronted her, she simply picked up Daniel and said flatly, "Daniel didn't mean it. You're the older brother. Don't be so petty." My hands and feet went cold as I held my father's still warm hand. While I was handling the funeral arrangements alone, she moved her lover into our home and started playing the part of the glamorous family matriarch. At first, the man wanted to kick me out of the house, but Evelyn still had some sense back then. She wasn't a complete fool yet. She realized that kicking out the legitimate Vance heir right after taking over would create a huge scandal, so she sent me to study abroad as a pretense. In reality, she just pushed me far out of her sight, picking the worst possible school and major just to have me out of her mind. Fortunately, she underestimated me so completely that after sending me away, she never bothered to check on me. That allowed me to use my own hard work and the trust fund my father left me to claw my way into the top jewelry design program in Europe. It took 15 years before she finally remembered I existed and repeatedly contacted me to come home for the sake of a family marriage alliance. Evelyn was just that incompetent. In only 15 years, she had squandered almost the entire Vance family fortune. The Morrison family, who had risen to prominence as the Vances declined, had their eyes on the last few remaining assets the Vances held and proposed a marriage alliance. But everyone in our circle knew that Daniel was just the son of a mistress who got promoted. The Morrisons naturally looked down on him and specifically requested me. Having your daughter make a fool of herself at her own engagement party, then walk out in front of everyone with a man you despise, was practically forcing the Morrisons to let her marry Daniel. I wondered how the notoriously proud Mr. Morrison would deal with his only daughter. After Chloe and Daniel got into the car, the driver ignored her, shouting from the back seat, and drove them silently through the gates of the Morrison estate. Chloe was forced by bodyguards to kneel on the floor in front of Mr. and Mrs. Morrison, who sat in stony silence. Even so, I heard that Chloe, under all that pressure, still had the nerve to speak up. "Father, what's done is done. I can't let Daniel down. Why don't we just let him marry into the family?" "And what about Alexander Vance?" Mr. Morrison asked, neither agreeing nor disagreeing. "Alexander is nothing but a dog on the Vance family's leash. How can he compare to Daniel? Besides, Alexander's been abroad for so many years. Who knows what kind of life he's been living? He's probably not even a decent person anymore. The Morrisons have no interest in someone like that." Mr. Morrison's hand holding his teacup tightened and tightened until he finally couldn't take it anymore and smashed the cup on Chloe's head. "You idiot! How could I have raised such an idiot? The name Alexander Vance alone is worth more than the entire Vance family. Their most valuable techniques are in his hands. Evelyn is a useless hack, not worth a single hair on Alexander's head. Let me be clear with you. My target was always Alexander. His reputation in Europe is staggering. I thought you would at least do some research on your own fiancé, but I guess I gave you too much credit. As for him," Mr. Morrison glanced at Daniel, who was being held by bodyguards nearby, and rubbed his temples as if fighting a headache. "Throw him out. Something this ill-mannered has no place in my home." Daniel started to scream and shout, but a bodyguard stuffed a cloth in his mouth and threw him out the door. Chloe wanted to say more, but Mr. and Mrs. Morrison were already standing up. "You have 1 week. If you're still thinking about that boy toy, you can get out of this family. Think about what you've done." Chloe knelt alone on the cold floor, silent. Meanwhile, Daniel, thrown out of the Morrison estate, was causing a scene. The paparazzi, who had already smelled the massive scandal, had surrounded the estate and captured photos of Daniel's undignified tantrum. I just gave things a little push under Leo's name, and the story spread like wildfire. The Morrisons were a wealthy family, but they didn't have deep ties to the media, so I wasn't afraid of them tracing anything back to me. Besides, plenty of people love to watch the drama of a wealthy family's illegitimate son. While I was away in Europe, Evelyn had genuinely doted on her son. Many of the Vance family's jewelry designs were released under Daniel's name. They weren't his work, of course, but it was the path Evelyn was paving for him. To take over the family business, Daniel inevitably had to make public appearances. Even though Evelyn used her power to shower him with accolades, Daniel's shallow knowledge and ignorance would occasionally slip through the cracks. Usually, Evelyn was there to clean up his messes, and onlookers, wary of the Vance family's power, were reluctant to dig deeper. But now, with such a huge scandal breaking, some curious people would naturally start paying attention. Daniel would post videos online and was often invited to shows, but his lack of substance had already drawn skepticism. People were already quietly questioning whether the designs credited to him were actually his. But these were just minor suspicions. To snatch the Vance family back from Evelyn, I needed to do more. I had underestimated Chloe's feelings for Daniel. A week after the disastrous party, the Morrisons released a statement saying that the marriage alliance with the Vance family would still proceed. The stars of this new alliance were none other than the protagonists of the recent scandal. Daniel was probably still dreaming of marrying into a wealthy family. After all, everyone knew that Mr. Morrison had been injured saving his wife years ago, and could only have one child, Chloe. But what many couldn't understand was why a powerful family like the Morrisons would let a tainted heir take over their vast empire. I suppose my dear ally had already found a way to make contact with the Morrisons. I wondered, was this socialite, so lost in her so-called love, ready for her fate as a disposable pawn? At that thought, I pulled out my phone and texted a question mark to an unsaved number. A period came back almost instantly. I turned off the screen. The show was about to begin. The Morrisons, ever concerned with their reputation, spent a fortune to scrub all the videos of Chloe and Daniel from the internet. When I got the news, Leo handed me a bank card. "We agreed, 50-50. This is your half, you can't say no." I casually tossed the card aside and reached for the fruit platter Leo was holding. Leo snatched the platter back, shielding it with his arm. "Don't worry, it's already taken care of." Stretching, I washed up and headed back to the small apartment I'd bought in the city. Not long after I got back to my little place, the doorbell rang. I opened the door to find Daniel standing outside, dressed impeccably. He looked nothing like the debauched figure in the video. His eyes scanned my apartment through the crack in the door before he smiled and handed me an invitation. "It's my and Chloe's engagement party in half a month. It's such an important occasion, you have to be there. Mom is still furious that you ruined the last party, but if you just bow your head and apologize, maybe she'll be in a good enough mood to let you come home." Daniel's eyes crinkled with a smile, his tone dripping with unconcealed glee. I took the invitation, slowly tore it to shreds, then took his hand and gently placed the pile of confetti into his palm. "Of course, my dear brother. I'll be there. Your engagement party wouldn't be complete without my blessing, would it?" Something I said must have struck a nerve, because Daniel finally dropped his suave act. "Don't get cocky, Alexander. I invited you out of pity. What are you, anyway? A dog kicked out of the family. Soon you won't even be worthy of looking up at me, the future head of the Morrison family. He got so worked up he even tried to swing at me. But his punch was weak and pathetic. I caught his wrist easily and slapped him across the face. He stumbled and fell to the floor. I looked down on him. The future head of the Morrison family? In that case, I hope Mr. Morrison will be magnanimous and spare a lowly ant like me in the future. With that, I shut the door and walked, smiling, to the elevator. Just as the elevator doors were closing, I gave him a little wave. See you then? A few days before Chloe and Daniel's engagement party, a rumor from an unknown source began to circulate. The Morrisons' daughter, Chloe Morrison, is not their biological child. The true Morrison heiress, who was swapped at birth, has been living elsewhere and has already built her own business. She has recently met with Mr. and Mrs. Morrison. Miss Rossi, your methods are as sharp as ever. No one can even trace the source of these rumors. In a private room, a beautiful and capable woman sat with her arms crossed, smiling at me. I took a sip of the coffee on the table. I've done my part. How are things progressing on your end, Miss Rossi? Sophia Rossi toyed with a small pocket watch. She heard my question but didn't answer right away. She opened the watch, glanced at it, touched the surface gently with her fingertip, and then slowly closed it. After all these years, as our little alliance of strays, you still don't trust my abilities? I rolled my eyes. I still don't know how you came up with a name like that. Sophia Rossi, the CEO of Rossi Enterprises, was someone I met by chance while studying abroad. The first time I met her, she was also 15, recently adopted from our home country and brought to that city. Although her adoptive parents were kind to her, she was still bullied as a young girl in a foreign land. I had a little money back then and helped her out, and we became friends. We stayed in touch over the years, but never discovered each other's true identities. It wasn't until a coincidence that I learned she was the child of Mr. Morrison and his first love. Mrs. Morrison, desperate to have Mr. Morrison for herself, had schemed to drive Sophia and her mother away. Mr. Morrison, cold-hearted, had let them be cast out onto the streets. When Sophia was 10, her mother died of despair. She was adopted by a couple who brought her to the city we both disliked. Later, her adoptive parents died in an accident. She took over their business and, step by step, built a small company into the Rossi Enterprises of today. I've already tampered with the DNA samples sent for testing. Make sure you dress formally when the show starts. Don't let all these years of hardship go to waste. I raised my glass to her. She drank hers in one gulp. We both saw a flicker of wildness in each other's eyes. Before the engagement party, 2 DNA test results were delivered to Mr. Morrison. He looked at the reports with a complicated expression. The moment he learned that his biological daughter, after being switched at birth, had managed to build her own empire and could now be reunited with him, the so-called Chloe Morrison ceased to exist in his eyes. And the day before the party, I publicly announced that I would be joining Rossi Enterprises as the chief design officer, taking over all of their jewelry design matters. Mr. Morrison knew my reputation. With me as a bargaining chip, even if he still had doubts about Sophia, he had no reason to refuse such a massive benefit, even if in reality Sophia might not be his daughter. So, at Chloe's engagement party, neither of the Morrisons showed up. Even the guest list was sparse. The entire event ended bleakly in a cold, empty atmosphere. Looking at the photos Leo sent me, I could see the ugly expression on Daniel's face at the party. His previous arrogance was completely gone. I stared at Daniel's ashen face through the screen. Don't worry, our game is just beginning. After the engagement party, Sophia and I met again to enjoy the spectacle of Chloe and Daniel's downfall. Sophia sat on a swing on the balcony, gently swaying. I never thought the decisive CEO of Rossi Enterprises would have such a girlish side. She smiled and stood up from the swing. It's just one of the few memories I have left of my mother. My eyes fell on the pocket watch in her hand. On it was a picture of a beautiful woman holding a small child. She walked over to me and extended her hand. Shall we, my trial run fiancé? The next day, Rossi Enterprises announced that its CEO, Sophia Rossi, was engaged to the legitimate Vance family heir, Alexander Vance. The news sent Rossi Enterprises' profile soaring, making it the talk of the town. In the public's eye, Rossi Enterprises, already an industry leader, had gained a red-hot design director who was now tied to the company for the long haul. After all, employees can leave, but people who decide to spend their lives together don't part so easily. I read the public commentary with a sneer. When I was young, my father used to describe his love for Evelyn as something beautiful and perfect. Sophia's father had also once made many promises to her mother, but all those vows and oaths were nothing but fleeting bubbles, not worth mentioning. Shortly after the news of my engagement to Sophia broke, Rossi Enterprises, in alliance with the Morrisons, began to target the Vance family business. I had long prepared a large portfolio of designs specifically to counter every product the Vances offered, from their standard lines to their custom pieces. Not a single style was overlooked. Because of my established reputation in Europe, selling these products was not an issue. Moreover, after Evelyn took control, the Vance family's inherited craftsmanship had long since eroded, making them incapable of fulfilling high-end custom orders. And knowing Evelyn's personality, she would never spend a significant amount of money on truly exceptional designs. In her eyes, that money was better spent on her own amusement. As the Vance family's market share was rapidly shrinking, concrete proof that Daniel had stolen others' designs and framed them appeared online, with victims even coming forward to speak out. To pave the way for Daniel, Evelyn had attributed most of the Vance family's jewelry designs to him. Once the plagiarism scandal broke, the Vance product line was completely dead in the water. As Rossi Enterprises pushed the Vance family to the brink of bankruptcy, the Morrison family, at Sophia's suggestion, hosted a cocktail party. At the party, Daniel's face was grim, but he had to force a smile and toast us. After all, I had made sure to send him several copies of the rumors about Chloe. There was no way he hadn't seen them. I looked him up and down and spoke with a smile. You look tired lately, little brother. Pale, too. Are things at the Morrison estate not going so well? Daniel didn't respond, but his already dark expression grew even gloomier. Of course, his life with the Morrisons was terrible. Even though he was engaged to Chloe, in Mr. Morrison's eyes, Chloe was nothing but a second-rate daughter, the bastard child his wife had from a previous affair. He naturally wouldn't show her any kindness. Furthermore, the scandal from Chloe's original engagement party with me, though gradually covered up, was still used by rival families to mock the Morrisons. Now, the nearly bankrupt Vance family couldn't offer Daniel any support. Instead, they constantly pressured him to ask the Morrisons for financial aid. Of course, he couldn't get a single cent from them. After all, the Morrisons had a hand in the Vance family's current predicament. I offered my arm, and Sophia elegantly took it. By the way, you must come to my and Sophia's wedding soon. Seeing your face there will make my own wedding feel complete. Sophia gave them a slight nod, but her dismissive attitude made Chloe's face change as well. However, wary of Sophia's status, Chloe didn't dare say anything. Seeing her restrained expression, I knew she was still unaware of the rumors spreading like wildfire outside her bubble. It made sense. The arrogant Chloe never had many true friends. Now everyone was just waiting to watch her downfall. So, of course, no one would tell her the truth. Smiling and waving at Chloe, Sophia and I moved on to greet other guests, not sparing them another glance. After the party, Rossi Enterprises intensified its assault on the Vance family. My phone rang incessantly with calls from Evelyn, undoubtedly begging for mercy, but I couldn't be bothered to answer. I got a new number, left my old phone charging in my small apartment, and paid it no more mind. Unable to reach me, Evelyn could only continue to pressure Daniel. Daniel, with no other choice, had to ask Chloe for help, but to his surprise, while Chloe appeared glamorous, she had very few assets of her own. Although she truly cared for Daniel and gave him what little she had left, it was a drop in the bucket compared to the massive deficit of the Vance family. Daniel kept asking for more money, but Chloe truly had nothing left to give. Even a deeply loved person becomes tiresome when they make endless demands, especially when those demands are impossible to meet. Chloe's attitude toward Daniel worsened, and their relationship became a ticking time bomb, waiting to explode. Since they had already come this far, I saw no reason not to give them a little push. Sophia signaled to Mr. Morrison her willingness to officially rejoin the family. Overjoyed, Mr. Morrison immediately began planning a banquet. During this time, several victims suddenly released a joint statement claiming to be Morrison Group employees. They alleged that Chloe had used her status as the Morrison heiress to coerce them into sexual relations, threatening their jobs to keep them silent. Some of them had even become pregnant with Chloe's children, but Chloe had disgustedly declared that such children were unworthy of the Morrison name and had them forcibly aborted. The news sent the Morrison Group's stock price plummeting. Mr. Morrison had Chloe dragged back to the family estate overnight, and how did I know all this so clearly? Because when the secretary reported it to Mr. Morrison, Sophia and I were sitting right across from him. When Chloe was dragged in and thrown onto the floor, I stood up and looked at her quietly. "Well, if it isn't the great Miss Morrison. I never knew you were such a scumbag. No wonder you and my brother got along so well. You're drawn to each other," I scoffed. Chloe looked up and met my gaze. "Alexander Vance? What are you doing here?" I smiled, walked over to Sophia, and clapped her on the shoulder. "You haven't heard? This is your older sister. Your identities were swapped at birth. Now Sophia is the true Morrison heiress, and you, Chloe, are just the bastard who usurped her place." Hearing my words, Chloe began to struggle wildly on the floor. "Impossible! I'm the Morrison heiress! Who the hell is Sophia Rossi? Impossible! Absolutely impossible!" Mr. Morrison walked over with a smile and took Sophia's hand. He glanced with disgust at the pathetic figure of Chloe on the floor, the custom watch I had recently given him gleaming on his wrist. Truly worthy of being my son-in-law. Such brilliant talent. He looked at me, his eyes filled with satisfaction. After that initial glance, he didn't spare Chloe another look. When the pointless conversation finally ended, Chloe struggled to her knees and looked at Mr. Morrison. "Dad?" At her voice, Mr. Morrison finally looked at her a second time. He sneered. "Chloe, I originally thought that since I raised you for so many years, even a dog would inspire some affection. If you had behaved, I had enough spare cash to support you for life. But not only did you ruin my family's reputation to marry that boy toy, you also brought this shame upon the Morrison name." As he spoke, Mr. Morrison's eyes grew colder and colder. "Throw her out. I'll tell the world you died in a street racing accident abroad. I no longer have a daughter." A couple of bodyguards walked over, roughly hoisted Chloe up, and carried her out the door. Throughout it all, Mr. Morrison chatted and laughed with us as if the person being dragged away was some insignificant object, not the daughter he had raised for over 20 years. It was true what they say about these wealthy families. Profit is all that matters. So-called affection is just material for idle gossip. After being thrown out of the Morrison estate, Chloe vanished without a trace. After the banquet, Sophia officially took her place in the Morrison family, merging her Rossi Enterprises into the Morrison Group. The return of the true Morrison heiress, bringing with her a company of comparable size, generated massive attention. The Morrison Group's stock price soared, not only covering the losses Chloe had caused, but also triggering a significant rally. Perhaps because of the immense profit Sophia brought, or perhaps due to some sense of guilt, Mr. Morrison handed over the chairmanship of the Morrison Group to her. In truth, it didn't matter much to us. During the period of instability at the Morrison Group, Sophia and I had already secretly acquired a large number of their shares. Even if Mr. Morrison hadn't handed it over, it would have only been a matter of time before the company fell into our hands anyway. Under Sophia's management, the Morrison Group's stock climbed steadily. Even the board members who had initially been skeptical of her leadership came to accept her. To celebrate the recent expansion of the company, Sophia decided to host a party at the old Morrison estate, inviting business partners. Mr. Morrison naturally had no reason to object. While sending out the invitations, I noticed we were one short. Without a word, I took the invitation meant for Leo and wrote a different name on it. The party was a great success. Between intentional and unintentional toasts, Mr. Morrison drank too much. I gestured to a bodyguard in the distance, and one of them approached. "Sir is drunk. Please take him to rest." The man nodded and helped Mr. Morrison to his room. Sophia and I continued to mingle with the guests until a scream echoed through the hall. Mr. Morrison's secretary stumbled out of his room, followed by a blood-soaked, crazed-looking Chloe. Who would have thought that the spoiled socialite, so absorbed in her life of pleasure, would plant her own people around her father? You have to hand it to the rich. They are all more cunning than the next. During the party, the head of the Morrison family, Mr. Morrison, was stabbed dozens of times and died from his injuries. The murderer was none other than his recently disowned daughter, Chloe. After she was subdued, it was discovered that she was suffering from a drug-induced psychosis. And when the police searched the premises, they found Mrs. Morrison in the basement, her limbs broken, drooling and staring blankly at the ceiling. After Sophia and I finished our interviews, the lead detective sighed heavily, but said nothing. The evidence showed that the person who had attacked Mrs. Morrison was none other than Mr. Morrison himself, in an act of love turned to hate. The turmoil caused by the deaths of the three Morrisons was quickly suppressed by Sophia. The shareholders were already used to her leadership, and she easily absorbed the remaining Morrison assets. The day she fully took over the Morrison legacy, Sophia looked at me. "Is it time?" Let's begin. Rossi Enterprises had already driven the Vance family into bankruptcy. As we had agreed, Sophia would help me buy it. Although I had enough assets to do it myself, I would need money for other things later. It was better to save where I could. After Chloe was kicked out, Daniel had also cut ties with her and returned to the Vance family. After all, they weren't officially married and had no real bond. Once the Vance family went bankrupt, Evelyn, who had always played the doting mother to Daniel, showed her true colors and began to beat and curse him. With some subtle nudging, Evelyn started drinking heavily. Soon after, she became addicted to gambling and quickly lost all her money. At this point, the money from the acquisition of the Vance family assets came through. Evelyn went on a gambling spree, convinced she would win it all back. But the house always wins. Soon, Evelyn had lost her entire share. Because she had personally transferred a large number of shares to Daniel, she knew he still had a considerable amount of money. When she went to demand money from him, she found him in the middle of packing his bags, ready to run. Seeing this, Evelyn flew into a rage and slapped Daniel twice. Daniel's father tried to intervene, but was shoved aside, his head hitting the wall and leaving a long streak of blood. Seeing his father's grim state, Daniel was overcome with fury. He grabbed a knife that happened to be nearby and plunged it directly into Evelyn's stomach. Staring at Evelyn lying in a pool of blood, Daniel didn't even have time to check on the father who had been injured trying to save him. He just panicked and fled. But he was covered in blood and was quickly spotted, restrained, and reported to the police. When the police arrived, they found the 2 bodies in the pool of blood. Realizing Evelyn was still barely alive, they quickly administered first aid and rushed her to the hospital. From a building across the street, I stared intently at the departing ambulance. Sophia reached out and covered my eyes. "Don't look." I calmed myself. "Later, put those 2 useless husks together, and make sure you hire a few capable people." When I received the call and rushed to the hospital, I heard good news. The doctor, with a grave expression, told me that Evelyn had lost too much blood and was now in a vegetative state. She was conscious. Her eyes could open slightly, but she would never move again. I took several deep breaths. The doctor, worried I might faint from shock, watched me closely. "Thank you. I'm fine." I looked into Evelyn's hospital room. "Enjoy the next few decades of your life. I'll do everything in my power to keep you alive." I turned and left. I knew Sophia would handle the rest. After taking over the Vance family business, I found the long-lost craftsmanship techniques in the belongings my father and uncles had left me, and managed to replicate them. The senior executives at the company pretended not to notice my return. I just got rid of the few who had been the most troublesome and couldn't be bothered with the rest. Once things at the company had finally stabilized, I met with Sophia again. She extended her hand for a shake. "It's been a while, Miss Rossi." "It's been a while, Mr. Vance." She smiled and finished the wine in her glass. "Here's to a future with no more hate and no more love." I downed my glass of red wine in one go and walked away.